In most health research studies, we are trying to answer a basic question. Is there an association between an exposure X and an outcome Y? To figure that out, we follow a structured two-step approach that you can easily remember using a simple mnemonic, the 3+1Cs. I'll quickly walk you through what these Cs represent, and in the next few slides, we'll break each one of them down in more detail. Step 1 is all about determining whether there is a statistical association or correlation between the exposure and the outcome. This includes the first three C's. Comparison. Are the outcomes different across levels of exposure? For example, do smokers and non-smokers have different rates of heart disease? Covariates or confounders. Are other factors influencing the outcome? Things like age, sex, blood pressure. So we need to adjust for them to isolate the effect of the exposure. Confidence interval gives us a range where the true difference likely falls, usually with 95% confidence. If these three pieces align, we may have a correlation, the statistical correlation, I mean. Step 2 is where we ask the bigger question, could it be causal? That's our +1C, causality. And to evaluate that, we look at several additional clues, like whether the exposure comes before the outcome, whether the relationship makes biological sense, if it's been seen in other studies, and more. We'll dive into each of them in just a few minutes. So, as we just discussed, in most health research studies, we typically have an exposure of interest and an outcome of interest. And the main goal is to figure out, are these two things related? In other words, is there an association or correlation between them? Before we dive deeper into what correlation actually means, let's look at a few examples of real-world exposure-outcome relationship. For example, we might be interested in knowing if the exposure smoking associated or correlated with lung cancer or not, or if BMI is associated with systolic blood pressure. Pfizer company might be interested in doing an experiment to see if their manufactured COVID-19 vaccine can in fact reduce COVID-19 infections. Do exercise help control hypertension? A psychiatrist or a psychologist might be interested in knowing if maternal stress during pregnancy can affect the birth weight of a newborn. And here is an example from public health. A public health professional might like to measure the female education and its association with the health of the children of these females. Let's begin with a quick overview of what statistical correlation means. Then we'll break it down into its three core components, what we call the 3 Cs of correlation. What is a statistical correlation? When exposure changes, the outcome tends to change in a predictable way. A correlation may be positive when both exposure and outcome increase or decrease together. It is negative when exposure increases, the outcome decreases, and vice versa. And when there isn't any consistent pattern between the exposure and outcome, we would say that there is no correlation between the two.